Hello, hi everybody. Get started right away. So if you guys want to make your way into the auditorium here, we'll get this presentation on the road here. Awesome, awesome. Wow, looks so great here. It's the first time we've had more than just a couple people in this space, and it's looking great in here. How's everybody doing out there? Elmo, nice to see you.
Good.
Jeff, Katie, everybody. Got my slick bot. I got Tony, Nano, Ender in the back. Awesome. Good, guys. Well, welcome to a World Peace Project. Thank you, everybody, for coming here today. The goal of this project is to spread the incredible message that we now finally have the tools to make world peace a reality. And today's event, we're going to have our question period after the presentation, which is about 25 minutes. In the future, we plan to have more discussion style events, but this is our debut event. Just going to kind of blow through it. We'll leave you guys unmuted unless someone comes in here and starts causing trouble. We'll keep the crowd, but so far everybody's acting like a responsible adult, so it's so nice. I'm on megaphone, yeah.
Oh, okay, okay.
Can't hear me?
I
can hear you.
We're good.
Sorry,
You're
what?
good. Perfect.
Go ahead.
You're good.
It was me.
Sound perfect. That's a lot of pressure. Okay, awesome. Okay, good. Everybody can hear me? You guys all hear me? Can hear me in the back there, Ender? Yep. Perfect. Okay, good. Super. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. So, all right. I should position myself here. Here we go. So, my name is Rick Dickinson, and world peace has been a passion of mine for more than 20 years. I've authored books, I've run a YouTube channel under the name Peacenik Rick, and I'm just a really big fan of technology, and my background is in computing science. About 9 years ago, I joined my local fire department, where it's been a privilege to serve my community as a firefighter EMT. And I've also founded a business where we develop virtual reality training simulators for emergency responders. And you spent a lot of time in alt space, you'd also recognize me as a local stand-up comedian, Slick Rick. But in case you guys are wondering, no, this project is not a joke. Yeah, so the goal of this project, like I just said, is to spread the message that we finally have the tools to make world peace a reality. So in today's presentation, we're just going to cover 3 key steps that will help us make this happen. So stick around to hear more about this and to find out what you guys can do to help. So world peace, a pretty lofty notion, right? Oh yeah, and there's our webpage too, if you guys want to get involved. peacenow.rocks has all our contact info on there, Discord page and everything. Good, so world peace. Like, what does it mean, right? It's a pretty lofty notion. I bet if we went around this space right now and we asked each of you, what does world peace mean? I bet we'd probably get as many definitions as there are in this space, right? But don't worry, all you introverts, we're not actually going to go around the group and force you into group conversation, right? So go ahead and let your heart rates come back down to normal, right? Yes. But for the sake of this project, we're going to be using just a very narrow definition of world peace. So, world peace, what is it not? Well, it doesn't mean the end of suffering or struggles or strife or conflict, as nice as those things would be. World peace does not mean that we live together in harmony. So, if that's what peace isn't, then what is world peace? That way, when we say that world peace is possible, it's clear exactly what we're all aiming for. So, for the sake of this project, world peace is defined as the end of institutionally armed conflict. So let's break that down a little bit more. So the end, that means it ceases, right? Pretty obvious. Institutionally organized, that means that these armies, they didn't just arise out of nowhere. They didn't sprout from grassroots movements. Instead, large, powerful corporations, powerful entities like governments and corporations and NGOs, they spend millions or billions of dollars to hire and train soldiers, to buy arms, and then they coordinate and deploy them into combat. And an armed conflict, like I said, is where 2 or more parties with trained combatants, they're using military-grade weapons to fight each other. So essentially, world peace means we stop wasting trillions of dollars on war, and we punish any organizations that are found to enable or perpetuate armed conflict. So that's pretty straightforward, right? I think we're done here today, right? No, not quite. Maybe I'll elucidate a little bit more. Okay, yes. So, okay. So world peace, now that we know what it means, what can we do to make it happen? So here with the World Peace Project, we've outlined three key ways that world peace will happen. Step one is defunding the war industry. Right now, there's just so much money to be made from war that there's no incentive for them to stop it. Right? In fact, the war industry is actually actively cooking up more wars around the world. So we need to take the money out of war for it to stop. Second key to peace is uniting and democratizing the planet. Uh, only by working together as a species can we hope to overthrow the supremely powerful and influential war industry. And the third key to peace is to prosper as a species. And that means we spend our money on improving living conditions around the world instead of wasting our resources on never ending conflict. And each of these key steps are actually already happening, and they'll just have to continue happening in unison for world peace to become a reality. Of course, I know we've got a smart group here today, and anybody with more than two brain cells can tell that none of these steps will be easy, right? They all represent unprecedented, monumental achievements in their own right. And they may be hard, but what's most notable is that none of them are impossible. Each of these steps can be attained. So please, if you guys take anything with you today, take this notion that world peace is possible. Now, I can tell some of you might have the same helpful voices in your head that I have in mine that say something like, okay, Peacenik Rick, if peace is so possible, then why hasn't it happened yet? Well, let me tell you, sarcastic voice in my head, world peace, as we've defined for this project, has not been possible up until right now. Only right here, right now, in 2021, has something finally changed. We finally, it has not been possible until right now. Sorry, one slide behind. There we go. We finally have invented the tools needed for attaining world peace. Technology has advanced in enough key fields that world peace is now within our grasp. And like I said, it doesn't mean the end of struggles and fighting. It doesn't mean the end of violence or competition or greed or selfishness. These are all inherent human traits. But just because we are all inherently violent and greedy, that doesn't mean that war is a natural extension of human behavior. See, for far too long, we've all been kept in the dark as to the reality of war. And that is that it doesn't need to exist naturally. War is, in fact, being conjured right out of thin air. They're being actively perpetuated. They're being fabricated, all as a for profit enterprise. And if it weren't for the trillions of dollars of profit at stake, war as we know it would cease to exist. So, in the next section, we're going to be talking about defunding the war industry. Well, we'll go over some of the key ways that we can strip the money out of war. But before we do that, let me just say that be hopeful, right? Be optimistic, everybody. Peace is not just a dream. The quest for world peace is not a waste of time. So like I said, if you take anything, take some hope with you today. And this hope doesn't even need to be based on wishes and whims and well wishes. So if you stick around, we'll actually talk about some real, rational reasons to actually believe in a newfound lasting peace within our lifetimes. And so just don't let the naysayers keep us down, right? Let's not let the old myths, the old pessimisms, and the old pro-war propaganda keep us from believing in world peace, because world peace is possible. Now, we are who we have been waiting for. It's just up to us to make world peace happen. All right, so step one, like I said, step one for first key to peace is to defund the war industry. And defund, that's just like a trendy way of saying take the money out of it. Right? Like we were saying, war is $1 trillion business. And for as long as there's these billions of dollars in profits to be made each year, war will continue to plague our world. So we need to take these profits out of industrialized warfare. The military industrial complex, it's also known as the war machine, it's the wealthiest and most powerful business cabal on earth, and it depends upon war for its very existence. So next, so what I got here, this is a slide of the top 20 US defense contractors in 2021. It's probably too small to read, but it's like Raytheon and General Dynamic, the Lockheed Martin. Some of these businesses, they all manufacture the weapons of war, and they are culpable for the destruction that they are enabling. Now, It can be a common narrative that the death dealers are actually legitimate businesses profiting by meeting a market demand. But like they can say like people are violent and tribal after all, and if they didn't make these weapons, someone else would. The truth is, war is illegitimate. War is unnatural, and if it weren't for these companies like these and those around them who are actively enabling and proliferating war, it wouldn't exist. War will cease as soon as these companies are held liable to the world for the harm that they know they are causing. And what is even worse still is that these same companies, they are not just meeting the demands of the market, they're actually actively creating new market demands. And by that, I mean that these companies are actually creating more wars around the world. And that's why the for-profit war industry is so sinister. Like they aren't content to just sit idly by waiting for the next war to break out. These corporations, they actually take a proactive approach to securing future returns, and they go out and they actively stir up more conflicts. So, I just can't say it enough. Wars are now natural. Right? Today's wars do not need to exist because today's wars do not exist because there's these irreconcilable differences amongst human groups. Wars exist because actors at the highest echelons of society are engaged in tactics to ensure a constant supply of conflicts around the globe. They fabricate unrest and tension, sowing the seeds of division, causing political instability, all in order to secure years and years of future conflicts off of which they can enrich themselves. And furthermore, as we're going to see when we talk about the second key to peace, the war industry is intentionally keeping us separated because a unified and united humankind is actually a grave threat to the war industry. So now, if you've never heard this notion before, that the only reason that we all still have war in our world, like you probably never even hear about that anymore. But the reason is because the mainstream media, it's owned by only we only have six corporations around the world that are responsible for more than 90% of the news that we all hear. And these same corporations, they're all in bed with the war industry, right? So they can never question endless wars because their bosses won't let them. And what's even worse still is that most high-level politicians on the left and the right side of the aisle, they're also bought and paid for by these same war profiteering corporations. So this means we can't even depend on our elected leaders to end wars without significant public outcry. So war profiteers, they'll never stop on their own. Politicians, they'll never stand up against wars without a huge shift in the public consciousness. And we can't count on the mainstream media to instigate this shift in public consciousness that we all need, right? But like I said, don't give up hope. There is still a force stronger than the entire war machine. It's a powerhouse entity that doesn't quite exist yet, but when it does, it will blow the war machine away. And of course, that powerhouse force is a uniting and cooperating human race. Of course, it will take an unprecedented shift in the global consciousness, and it'll require us to cooperate like we never have before. And we're going to be talking more about cooperation in the next key step. But this process has already begun, and it's going to continue to happen at a faster pace. But before we talk about the second key step to peace, we're just going to talk a little bit more what we can do to actually strip the financial incentives away from war, right? So how can we defund the war industry, right? This trillion-dollar industry, what can we possibly do? Well, do you guys remember when Big Tobacco got sued for billions of dollars for the diseases and the cancers that they inflicted upon our world? You guys remember that? They got sued for billions of dollars. For years and years and years, they denied that they were responsible, but ultimately they got held culpable. Well, over the decades and the centuries, war profiteers have enabled tens of millions of people to be slaughtered, displaced, injured, and left with generations of physical and emotional damage. Profiteers, they didn't just operate in the shadows, right? And while they may claim to deny it, their actions enable bloodshed on industrial scales, and they need to be held accountable. So we can use class action lawsuits against the war industry, world versus the war machine, and hold these corporations, hold them financially responsible, the tunes of billions or trillions. Of course, yeah, if anybody, of course, the shrewd amongst you will notice, we're going to say questions to the end there, Jeff, sorry, but if you were wondering, of course, this is going to be an uphill battle, right? Because these war profiteers companies are so powerful. And not only are they powerful, they have deep pockets, they have tremendous influence, and they're not afraid to kill people. Right? Plus, they also have most of the world's politicians eating out of the palm of their hands. So, but that's where we get to the second key to peace, which is to pressure our political leaders. Right now, like I said, we have politicians on both sides of the aisle in bed with the war industry. They receive campaign donations, and once they do, they'll return the favor by voting to continue wars. And they'll even perpetuate the myth that these wars are necessary. And then once they receive their bribes, they'll actually return the favor by offering the juiciest defense contracts to the people who bribe them. So this creates a vicious cycle. Where you have these defense contractors lobbying billions of dollars in order to curry favor with politicians, and the politicians repay their benefactors with lucrative contracts. So essentially, democracy is being undermined, and war is being perpetuated at an increasing rate, right? So what can we do to pressure our politicians? Well, there's some things we could do, like we could enact legislation that prevents them from receiving campaign contributions from these companies. We can say, no, the politicians, they work for us, not for these handful of powerful war-mongering corporations, right? Another thing we can do is once we have politicians on our side, they can enact 100% tax on all the profits from war. Companies, they shouldn't be making money off the bloodshed that they're enabling. And then, of course, the third thing we do to our politicians and our government in general is to drastically reform the world's governments and to spread true democracy all around the world. We'll actually be talking more about how to do that in the next step. But, breaking this vicious cycle by defunding the war industry, it's no easy feat, right? But what's key is that it's not impossible, right? It can be done. And, the human race, we're just actively being divided by powerful forces. But the truth is, humankind, we all have far more in common than not, and we all benefit from living in a world of peace. And really, there's nothing in human nature that would prevent us from coexisting on a planetary scale. So, our presentation, like I said, there's our webpage, peacenow.rocks, if you want to find out how to get in touch with us. And we're just going to take a little intermission here. So just to break it up into two parts. But, for this intermission, like how many people have ever heard of the overview effect? Anybody know what that is? Well, essentially astronauts, when they went up into space and they look at the world, sort of how we're looking at it there, they had a shift in their consciousness where they realized that, that's all one thing. We're part of this whole world community. Until they came up and looked at the planet like that, they didn't have that effect. And then there's also the peace intention experiment. That's where groups of practitioners, they actively meditate to consciously, intentionally bring peace to Earth through their meditation, right? So what I was thinking we can kind of do as a group here, collective, is we could just take a minute to just consciously send peace and love and goodwill to our world there. Right, so take just a minute to do that. I'm going to do that as well. If you guys want to throw up emojis, you're welcome to do that as well. In the future, we're actually going to have an MRE that sends out some sort of giant heart or giant love to the world, but that's something in the works, but awesome. Super. Awesome. Yeah. And another benefit of sending our positive feelings to the earth is now that we're back on the earth here, can you feel positive vibes that we just sent to the earth flooding us? Can anybody feel that? Yeah, you can, Tony. Awesome. Awesome. Yes, I can feel it too, right? So yeah, I love doing that. Just sending out positive goodwill to the universe. And then if you're ever feeling down, you can tap into those reserves that you sent out there. So hey, let's see here. Okay. We're going to move on to the second half now. So the second key to world peace is to unite and democratize the planet. Again, no small feat, right? But, you know, not only will we unite and democratize the planet, yeah. And, sorry, lost my train of thought here. Okay, let's start again. Okay, so the second key to attaining world peace is for the human race to unite across the planet to spread real functioning democracy around the world. And like I said, again, this isn't going to be easy, but it is still entirely within the realm of possibility. And actually, this unification process has already begun. It's already been happening. More than 60% of us, more than 60% of the human race already has internet access. And technologies like social media and social VR, these are going to continue to erode barriers which have been keeping us divided. And as that happens, more of us shift to become globally conscious, just like the astronauts when they went up into space with the overview effect. And while this may seem like a small internal mental shift, it can actually have a profound impact on our species. So if you guys didn't know, we humans, we have a very tribal nature. We have instinctive, primitive tendencies to form in-groups and out-groups. It's like an us versus them mentality. As our planet comes together, more and more people, they become part of our extended family. Our extended families grow to include the rest of the human population. So the whole world automatically becomes part of our own in-group, part of our own tribe. Of course, this isn't really a new concept. Like over 300 years ago, Francois Salignac once said, all wars are civil wars because all men are brothers. And that's the truth, right? And I'm guessing most of us here today, most people, it's not that we don't want peace, right? The problem is that we've never really had the tools to make peace happen. And, you know, like we've been discussing, the war industry, they've existed for centuries. It's $1 trillion behemoth, and it holds tremendous influence around our world, pretty much more than any other institution. But for us to have a chance to fight against such a entrenched powerhouse, we need something even greater to fight back. And like I kind of spoiled in the first half, it's a force that hasn't quite coalesced yet, but it will be able to save us all. And that force, of course, is a unified and cooperating human race. Together, as a species, we will have the power to dismantle the war machine and usher in a permanent age of peace. That's why the second key step to peace, uniting as a species, plays such an integral role to attaining world peace, because only a unified human race will be able to successfully tackle the first key to peace, which, as we just discussed, is to defund the war industry. The war industry, like I was saying, war industry and their media counterparts have long divided us along anything they can find to split us up, whether it's our race, our sexuality, religion, nationality, culture. They can even do fork versus or Coke versus Pepsi. Anything they can do to drive a wedge between humans, they will do it. And that's actually intentional, right? Because for as long as we remain divided, we won't be able to mount a coordinated attack against the war industry. And only together can we effectively dismantle the war machine. So that's why the military-industrial complex continually sows the seeds of division, because a unified human race poses a threat to the war machine. So, we just heard So, like we just heard, a global unification of the human race is actually already underway. But there are things that we can do to help bolster this process. And the first is democracy in a box, and the second that we have here at the World Peace Project is called the Peace Through VR Initiative. So first up, democracy in a box. What is that? It's essentially an out-of-the-box solution for anybody, anywhere. They can deploy a reliable, open form of governance. It's a foolproof, uncorruptible set of blueprints that forms a highly secure, robust, transparent government. It's one that's consistently improving itself, one that holds leaders accountable to the public. It's a democratic tool that can be rolled out for any size population, whether it's a small rural community or a group comprised of the entire human race. So I wish I could tell you where to go online to download this amazing tool, but actually it doesn't quite exist yet. But I'll tell you this, though, years ago when I thought of this, I recognized that it would actually take a team of highly skilled people and millions of dollars to develop this. But fortunately for all of us, some teams have actually already taken this up. Teams are working towards digitally democratizing the world, and that's just amazing. So what has most piqued my interest is actually the power of the blockchain. Everybody here has probably heard of Bitcoin. I'm pretty sure, right? Everybody's heard of Bitcoin, right? Well, Bitcoin has actually led the way for even more useful crypto technologies like Ethereum and Cardano. And these cryptos, they actually allow users to build applications that run on top of the blockchain. And they make entirely decentralized yet highly secure applications doing this. So things like Cardano, this amazing tech is actually going to allow us to decentralize our economies, meaning we're no longer going to be dependent on our current banking systems. We're not going to be dependent on the economic models tailored by corporations and governments. And these very same technologies, these crypto technologies, they're actually going to allow us to decentralize our governments, right? And that's nothing short of revolutionary. So it's actually going to start on smaller scales where a few towns and cities, they're going to start adopting this tech to run their own government. And then maybe a small oppressed country will undergo a revolution. And instead of putting the next tyrant to continue the suffering, they're going to actually roll out a democracy in the box solution. And they're going to have an everlasting freedom. They're never going to be risk falling under the rule of a dictatorship again. And as people all around the world see this democracy in a box solution working, they're going to want it too. So this genie is not going to go back into the bottle, and the world is not going to stop until we all have a lasting democracy. So when I'm here and I'm talking about how world peace is now finally possible, these are some of the key things that I'm talking about, because these have never been available before, and they're revolutionary, and it's going to be vital to making world peace happen. So the second initiative that we're talking about to help foster peace through VR. So peace through VR, it actually came about from the results of a thought experiment. The question was asked, if there were no limitations and anything was possible, what would you do to help the world with virtual reality? And the answer that I came up with was to connect individuals from warring groups and have them meet through the safety of virtual reality. And the reason or the goal is to have them put a human face on what would become a former enemy. So imagine if we sent VR headsets to key members of warring parties. Right? They can meet in an environment similar to this, like we're meeting right here in AltSpace. They could run through a structured series of interactions aimed at helping both of them see the other person as just that, as being another person. Like you understand that war depends upon dehumanizing the enemy. It's like making them into some kind of boogeyman. But when we can break down that illusion, we can break down a contributing factor to war. Maybe a show of emojis. Anybody think peace through VR? Is that a good idea? Anybody see that actually working? A couple people. Awesome, nice. Super, yeah, appreciate it. Yeah. Well, Peace Through VR is still embryonic, right? So make sure to reach out, get in touch with us if you're excited about it and you want to contribute in any way. Peacenow.rocks is our webpage. You can find our contact info there. Let's see here. Okay, so now we are at the third key for achieving world peace. And the third key to achieving peace, as you see there, is to prosper as a species. Again, similar to how the second key to peace is actually already happening. We're actually already unifying as a species. We've also already been prospering as a species. And this trend just needs to continue. And our ever increasing wealth needs to reach people everywhere around the world. But up next, I'd like to actually just show you two really exciting graphs, and they demonstrate amazing facts that we rarely hear about from the mainstream media. So the first one actually shows that we are the most prosperous we've ever been. Each one of these lines just shows how global poverty is on the decline all around the world because we're getting wealthier as a species. And the second graph I'll show you here, a little tougher to read, but if you look to the right, it's all trending down, and that just is the amount of global deaths that we've had since for the past 600 years. And you can see global deaths are on a decline, and that's because war is actually on the decline. Even though we wouldn't necessarily know it if we looked at the news, but the world is actually the most peaceful it has ever been. We're the most peaceful and we're the most prosperous humans that have ever lived since the dawn of humankind. So I'm definitely grateful for that. And but the fact that our world is the most peaceful and the most prosperous, that's actually not a coincidence, right? That's because war and poverty are just so deeply intertwined. See, never-ending wars, they leave their populations decimated and destitute, surrounded by suffering and poverty. And when people grow up surrounded by abject poverty, they're much more likely to take up arms. Right? When people live comfortable lives with basic security as a minimum, they are far less inclined to fight and die for somebody else's cause. That's why the third key for world peace is for us to prosper as a species. For as long as there's extreme poverty in our world, conditions will be ripe for wars to exist. Poverty is actually so essential for the continuation of war. These war profiting organizations, the same ones we say have been dividing us as a species, they will actually actively support corrupt governments, and they'll promote unrest and upheavals all around the world. So that's why the first key to world peace, defunding the war industry, is such a vital part to attaining world peace, because unless the war industry is stopped, they're going to continue to stir the pot, condemning more and more generations to grow up surrounded by conflict and poverty, all in order to supply another generation of combatants. Sorry, I'm a little behind with my slides, boy. Shame on me. All right. So in 2020, the world actually put nearly $2 trillion towards military spending. Like $2 trillion. Like, can you believe that? That's just 1 year. Like, just imagine how much good these funds could have done, right? We could have had solutions for ending global poverty. We could have focused on non-violent ways to resolve long-standing conflicts. We could have paid reparations to the victims of wars and their families. Could have comprehensive veteran support and far much more, right? So it's just such a shame, but like I said, that's what we're going to change. And during this presentation, if you've been here the whole time, you may have noticed how there's a lot of oh my god, my bad. So during this presentation, you guys may have noticed how each of the three keys for world peace, they all depend on each other, right? Like, we need to defund the war machine to keep them from dividing us as a species. We need to unite as a species to defund the war machine. We need to, as we defund the war machine, we can invest those resources into prospering as a species. And the more we prosper and unite as a species, the more it will become clear it is in all of our interests to dismantle the war machine. So this may seem like it's a real conundrum, right? But you look at it with a positive light. Since all of these goals are intertwined, a small victory in any one of them contribute towards the bigger goal, right? So anything we can do, anything that brings us one step forward is actually bringing us closer to a world of peace. So keep that in mind. All right, so just to recap what we talked about today, three keys for creating world peace. First is to remove the financial incentives which are driving us towards war. The second is to foster a united humankind that has a fair and working form of democratic self-governance for all people in all countries of the world. And the third key to world peace is for us to channel our resources towards improving the world instead of us blowing it up. You know, we humans, we are capable of tremendous feats. We are a truly remarkable species and fundamentally altering the way our global political and economic systems functions for the betterment of all may seem like a really daunting task. And I mean, it is, right? But it's also still within our power, right? We have the power to make this happen. And it's entirely within our power. We can channel our resources towards ending conflicts, towards ending poverty, towards weeding out corruption, and towards uniting as a species. So, what I'd like you guys to do is just, don't be fooled by the war industry propaganda. Right? War is not inevitable. War is, in fact, like we said, being manufactured. It's being conjured into existence by large, powerful corporations who are built upon exploiting human behaviors for profits. But we're not going to let that get us down, right? We're not going to let that get us down because, like I was saying, the only reason humankind has not risen up against the war industry is because we haven't had the necessary tools until this very moment in human history. So world peace, like we said, for the context of this project, has not been possible until right now. Only right now we have the means. So we can form a functioning democratic system around the world. We can strip away all the money out of war and see the war industry dry up. And we can come together as a species like never before and reclaim control over the future of humankind. So, good. All right, so we made it to the end of the presentation. Good. I just want to talk a little bit before we open up for questions. I just want to talk a little bit more about what you guys can do to help. So, first thing you guys could do is actually don't be afraid to talk about world peace, right? Like I'll tell you guys, like as a comedian, I kind of know a little bit about what's funny, and the idea of world peace can almost seem like a comical notion. Like it's like kind of like a laughably quaint lost dream from a time forgotten. A little bit, yeah. You know what I'm talking about, Elmo, right? But this is actually 2021, and it's a year of great opportunities. And we have in our hands tools that have never existed before until right now. So, even though there's been some people before us and people who are still continuing to beat the drums of peace, let us add our own voices into that mix because it's really important to become beacons of hope for everybody around us, right? So, start a dialogue. Like I said, don't be afraid to talk about world peace because we can't count on anybody but us to make it happen. So, good. And last slide here, peacenow.rocks if you want to find us online. We got our Discord channel, and you can also send me an email if you want to reach out. Going forward from here, we're going to just continue having similar events. I'm going to bring in speakers who are talking with similar themes, and our goal with this project is just to have this message reach millions. The message being that we now have the tools to make world peace a reality. And until millions of people hear that, far less likely to make it happen. Awesome. Super. I really appreciate all you guys sticking through this, listening. And like I said, the goal is to spread the message, but I also just want to get better at delivering this presentation. So I appreciate all you guys bearing with us for our first debut event here. And I guess at this point, we'll open it up questions here. I just